September 17, 1941, 22:47 hours. Over occupied France 8 miles east of Calais. Flight Lieutenant James Kit Carson banked his Vickers Wellington bomber at 4,000 feet, circling what appeared to be a pristine Luftwaffe airfield below. Runway lights glowed in perfect geometric patterns. 3 hangars stood in regulation spacing. 14 Messerschmitt fighters lined the apron in textbook formation. Carson knew every single one was made of wood. Before we continue with Carson's incredible story, we need your help to keep these forgotten heroes alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you a veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now back to occupied France, September 1941, where Carson was about to deliver the most unusual payload in RAF Bomber Command history. The bombardier, Sergeant Thomas Whitley from Coventry, crouched over the bomb site. His hands weren't on the release mechanism for the standard 500-pound GP bombs loaded in the rear bay. Instead, he steadied a single object in the forward compartment. A bomb casing carved entirely from wood, painted grey, stenciled with official-looking markings, and bearing a message in perfect German that would humiliate the Luftwaffe more than 1,000 tons of high explosives. Holz für Holz, it read, wood for wood. How did RAF Bomber Command, desperate for every ounce of explosives, every aircraft, every trained crew, justify sending a combat mission to drop a wooden joke? The answer lay in a war within the war, fought not with bullets, but with deception, frustration, and ultimately, savage humour. James Carson grew up in Whitby, a fishing town on England's northeast coast, where his father repaired trawler nets for 18 shillings a week. Kit, nicknamed for his habit of carrying a repair kit everywhere, learned to spot a fake from 100 yards. Counterfeit nets used inferior rope that looked perfect, but snapped under load. By age 12, he could identify fraud by texture, weight, and the way shadows fell on knots. He joined the RAF in 1938 at 19, motivated not by patriotism, but by a recruiter's promise. Learn to fly, see the world, get paid £3 a week. Carson proved exceptional at photographic reconnaissance interpretation, that tedious job of studying aerial photographs through magnifying glasses for 8-hour shifts, noting every shadow, every inconsistency, every detail that didn't belong. In April 1940, Carson stood 5'7" in his boots, weighed 142 pounds, and wore glasses thick enough that ground crews joked he could spot submarines from altitude. None of that mattered when examining reconnaissance photos. What mattered was that his brain recognized patterns. By summer 1940, Nazi Germany controlled continental Europe. The Luftwaffe outnumbered the RAF. Britain stood alone, and RAF Bomber Command faced a critical problem. They were running out of everything. Fuel, bombs, crews, aircraft. Every Wellington bomber lost over occupied territory was a catastrophe. Every 500-pound bomb dropped on empty fields was a tragedy of waste. And the Luftwaffe was making them waste everything. Between May and August 1940, RAF bombers flew 487 night missions against German military targets in occupied France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Photographic reconnaissance after raids showed excellent bombing accuracy. Hangars obliterated, runways cratered, aircraft destroyed on the ground. There was just one problem. The aircraft were made of wood. The hangars were canvas over timber frames. The runways were painted grass fields. The entire airfields were elaborate fakes. The Germans called them Scheinflugplatz, fake airfields. They were masterpieces of deception. Luftwaffe engineers studied RAF bombing patterns and constructed dummy bases exactly where British bombers would expect real ones. They positioned fake fighters to cast authentic shadows at dawn and dusk. They lit false runway markers with precise spacing. Some installations included fake oil drums that produced realistic smoke when hit. One dummy airfield near Lille even featured a wooden control tower with a stuffed dummy officer visible in the window. RAF Bomber Command was hemorrhaging resources attacking plywood. Flight Lieutenant Richard Morrison was the first person Carson lost to a fake airfield. Morrison came from Edinburgh, spoke with an accent so thick even other Scots struggled to understand him, and dreamed of opening a pub called the Wooden Nickel after the war. He and Carson had served together since training, shared a barracks room, traded cigarette rations, and made a pact. Whoever survived would visit the other's family and tell them their son died doing something that mattered. On the night of July 23, 1940, Morrison's Wellington was hit by flak while bombing what reconnaissance identified as a crucial Luftwaffe fighter base near Amiens. The aircraft limped back across the channel, crashed on approach to RAF Feltwell, and burned. Morrison died in the wreckage along with his entire crew, 6 men. Photographic reconnaissance 3 days later revealed the truth. The Amiens base was completely fake. Morrison had died protecting bombers attacking a movie set. The flak that killed him had been real German guns protecting an elaborate wooden stage production. Carson stood at Morrison's funeral in the rain and made the promise. Whatever Morrison's death cost, Carson would make it matter. By September 1940, RAF intelligence estimated the Germans had constructed at least 15 major fake airfields in occupied territory, with dozens more smaller dummy installations. Each cost Britain between 40 and 200 tons of bombs, explosives desperately needed for real targets. More importantly, each fake base drew bombers into flak traps. Real anti-aircraft batteries surrounded the wooden bases, specifically to shoot down British aircraft attracted to the decoys. In 8 weeks between June and August 1940, 12 Wellington bombers were lost attacking fake installations. 72 aircrew killed or captured, all for plywood and canvas. Carson noticed something nobody else saw. It happened on an October night in 1940, during a routine photo interpretation shift at RAF Medmenham, the Reconnaissance Intelligence Centre in Buckinghamshire. Carson was examining sequential photographs of a suspected airfield near Calais, comparing images taken 3 days apart. Something was wrong with the shadows. Real aircraft cast shadows that moved throughout the day as the sun crossed the sky. These shadows remained identical across 3 days. Carson requested photos from other times: dawn, noon, evening. The shadows never moved. The aircraft were fixed to the ground. More telling, fresh bomb craters appeared in one photograph set, surrounded by realistic debris patterns. But subsequent images showed the craters in exactly the same condition days later. No repair crews, no equipment, no activity. Real airfields bustled with constant movement. These bases showed perfect stillness except when being attacked. Carson pulled files on 15 suspected Luftwaffe airfields, using a technique he'd learned checking fishing nets, comparing weight distribution and stress patterns. He analyzed shadow density, drainage patterns around buildings, wear paths between structures. Real bases showed foot traffic between barracks and hangars. Fake bases showed pristine grass. 13 of the 15 bases were completely false. Carson wrote a detailed report documenting each fake installation with precise coordinates, photographic evidence, and recommendations. Stop bombing them. The report went to his commanding officer, Wing Commander Peters, who forwarded it up the chain to Bomber Command headquarters. The response came back in a week. Noted, continue current targeting priorities. The problem wasn't intelligence. The problem wasn't photographic evidence. The problem was pride. Bomber Command had invested months attacking these targets. Admitting they'd been bombing plywood meant admitting catastrophic failure in intelligence, mission planning, and resource allocation. Senior officers refused to acknowledge the deception, so bombers kept attacking wooden targets, and aircrew kept dying in flak traps. Any other photo interpreter would have filed another report through proper channels. Carson did the opposite. He started collecting wood. Carson's barracks mate, Sergeant David Chen from Manchester, had worked as a carpenter's apprentice before the war. Chen could shape wood with the same precision. Carson could spot fakes. One evening in late August 1941, Carson showed Chen the reconnaissance photos and explained his idea. "The Germans are mocking us with wood," Carson said. "Let's mock them back." Chen understood immediately. How big? Regulation 500-pound bomb size. Has to look perfect from the ground. Has to survive the drop. What Carson proposed violated approximately 17 military regulations, using workshop resources for unauthorized projects, misappropriating military time and materials, potentially compromising operational security. If discovered before completion, court-martial was certain. They didn't care. Chen borrowed oak planks from a damaged hangar scheduled for demolition. Carson requisitioned paint and stencils through official channels by claiming he needed them for training materials. Technically true, though he didn't specify what kind of training. They worked in a maintenance shed behind the motor pool, always after midnight, never more than 90 minutes per session to avoid suspicion. The construction took 47 nights. Chen carved the bomb casing in sections, nose cone, body, tail fins, then fitted them together with wooden dowels and aircraft glue. The result was a hollow wooden shell that weighed 43 pounds, light enough to drop safely, heavy enough to survive release from altitude. Carson painted its standard RAF bomb grey, added stenciled markings indicating fictitious lot numbers and inspection stamps, and carefully painted the message in German Gothic script across the body. Holz für Holz, wood for wood. Below that, in smaller letters, mit den besten Grüßen der RAF, with best regards from the RAF. The final technical challenge was the drop mechanism. Standard bomb releases used explosive bolts, obviously unsuitable for wood. Chen fabricated a simple gravity release using canvas straps and a mechanical lever the bombardier could trigger manually. Total installation time in the Wellington's forward bomb bay, 23 minutes. Carson faced one more obstacle: authorization to fly the mission. He couldn't request permission through normal channels. The entire concept violated protocol. But Carson had spent 18 months studying German fake airfields. He knew their locations, layouts, defensive positions. He also knew Wing Commander Peters was privately frustrated with bomber losses at dummy targets. Carson prepared a one-page briefing, coordinates of the fake airfield near Calais, photographic evidence of its falseness, a proposal for a single aircraft reconnaissance mission that would deliver a message to German intelligence regarding their deception operations. He never explicitly mentioned a wooden bomb. Peters never explicitly asked. On September 17, 1941, Peters signed the authorization for a special reconnaissance mission to the Calais area. Takeoff at 22 hours, single Wellington bomber, crew of 6, return by 0100 hours. Carson's crew knew something unusual was planned. The wooden bomb sat in the forward bay, clearly visible, impossible to miss. But nobody questioned it. Everyone at RAF Medmenham knew about the fake airfields. Everyone had lost friends to wooden targets. Sergeant Whitley, the bombardier, examined the wooden bomb before takeoff and ran his hand over the painted German script. "Morrison would have loved this," he said quietly. Carson nodded. "That's why we're doing it." The Wellington lifted off from RAF Feltwell at 22:07 hours, 7 minutes late due to a bulky starboard engine that required adjustments. The flight across the channel took 41 minutes through scattered clouds at 8,000 feet. No German fighters intercepted them. The Luftwaffe rarely flew night patrols over fake installations. Why waste fuel protecting wood? At 22:47 hours, Carson descended to 400 feet and circled the fake airfield. In the moonlight, it looked absolutely convincing. Runway lights glowed. Hangars stood in perfect formation. Wooden Messerschmitts lined the apron, each positioned with regulation spacing. Carson dropped to 2,000 feet. The fake airfield had no real anti-aircraft batteries. The Germans had learned that shooting at RAF bombers attacking dummy targets revealed the fakery. Silence protected the deception better than guns. "Target acquired," Whitley called from the bombardier position. "Release when ready," Carson replied. Whitley centered the fake hangars in his sight, waited 3 seconds, and pulled the manual release lever. The canvas straps fell away. The wooden bomb dropped free, tumbling slightly as it fell. Fins over nose over fins. The Wellington banked hard right and climbed. Carson watched through the side window. The wooden bomb hit the grass runway 50 yards from the fake hangars and bounced twice before coming to rest, intact, upright, clearly visible against the painted grass. "Perfect placement," Whitley said. "Think they'll find it?" "Oh, they'll find it," Carson said. "Question is whether they'll laugh or rage." The answer was both. At 09:15 hours on September 18, 1941, a Luftwaffe maintenance crew arrived at the fake airfield for routine inspection, checking canvas surfaces for weather damage, replacing faded paint, adjusting wooden aircraft positions. Feldwebel Klaus Hartmann, a career NCO from Munich responsible for supervising 3 dummy installations, noticed the object on the runway immediately. British bomb, grey casing, standard marking, unexploded. Hartmann approached cautiously. Unexploded ordnance killed bomb disposal crews regularly. He knelt 3 meters away and examined it through binoculars. The casing was wood. Hartmann crept closer, read the German inscription, and started laughing so hard his assistant thought he was having a breakdown. When he could breathe again, Hartmann photographed the wooden bomb from 6 angles, filed a formal report to Luftwaffe intelligence headquarters in Paris, and, violating protocol, added a handwritten note. "The British know, all of it, every fake base. This is their way of telling us." The wooden bomb photograph circulated through Luftwaffe command within 48 hours. Initial reactions split between fury and grudging respect. Some officers demanded retaliation. Others recognized the message's strategic significance. British intelligence had completely penetrated German deception operations. Every fake airfield was now worthless because RAF Bomber Command knew they were fake. More critically, the wooden bomb demonstrated sophisticated psychological warfare. The Luftwaffe had spent millions of Reichsmarks, thousands of man-hours, and considerable engineering expertise constructing elaborate deceptions. The RAF responded with a carved joke that cost perhaps 2 pounds of materials and made the entire German effort look foolish. German military culture valued efficiency, precision, engineering excellence. Being outsmarted by British humour was worse than being outfought by British bombs. Within 3 weeks, Luftwaffe High Command quietly ordered construction, halted on new fake airfields. Resources were redirected to actual defensive installations. The existing dummy bases remained in place. Removing them would confirm their falseness, but no additional effort was invested. Between October 1941 and January 1942, RAF bomber losses over occupied France decreased by 31%. The reduction came partly from improved navigation, better intelligence, and increased fighter escort, but significantly from no longer attacking wooden targets surrounded by flak traps. Carson never received official recognition for the wooden bomb mission. His report documenting fake airfields eventually reached Bomber Command analysis teams, where it was filed without attribution. Wing Commander Peters wrote a commendation for exceptional photographic intelligence work that went into Carson's personnel file but generated no medals, no promotion, no public acknowledgement. The mission itself was classified until 1968. When documents were finally declassified, historians had difficulty verifying details because most participants were dead and official records were deliberately vague. The wooden bomb itself disappeared, possibly destroyed, possibly kept as a souvenir by someone at the Calais airfield, possibly still sitting in a forgotten warehouse. Carson flew 73 more missions before the war ended. He survived a crash landing in March 1943 that killed 2 crew members. He survived flak damage over Hamburg that left his Wellington held together by cables and prayer. He survived until October 7, 1944, when his aircraft was shot down over Bremen during a daylight precision raid. His Wellington exploded in mid-air, no survivors, no bodies recovered. Carson was 25 years old. The RAF sent a standard notification letter to his parents in Whitby. The local newspaper ran a 3-sentence obituary, identifying him as Flight Lieutenant J. Carson, lost in action over Germany. Nothing about photographic intelligence, nothing about fake airfields, nothing about a wooden bomb that humiliated the Luftwaffe and saved dozens of British lives. His parents never knew their son's greatest accomplishment. Morrison's family never knew that Carson had kept his promise, that Morrison's death led directly to exposing German deception and preventing further losses. Sergeant Chen survived the war, returned to Manchester, and worked as a furniture maker for 41 years. He told the wooden bomb story to exactly 3 people: his wife, his daughter, and a military historian researching RAF intelligence operations in 1979. Chen died in 1987 at age 73. His obituary mentioned his RAF service in one sentence, with no details. Wing Commander Peters rose to Air Commodore, retired in 1952, and never publicly discussed the wooden bomb incident. His personal papers, donated to the Imperial War Museum after his death in 1971, included a single photograph, a wooden bomb lying on grass with German script clearly visible. On the back, in Peters' handwriting, "Wood for Wood, September 1941, they got the message." In 1995, a German aviation historian named Werner Schaffer published a comprehensive study of Luftwaffe deception operations. While researching Luftwaffe records in Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv, Schaffer found Hartmann's 1941 report about a British's Holzbomber, British wooden bomb. The report included photographs and Hartmann's assessment. Enemy intelligence has identified all dummy installations with complete accuracy. Further investment in fake airfields cannot be justified. Schaffer spent 6 years tracking the origin of the wooden bomb. British records were fragmentary and often contradictory. He eventually found Carson's personnel file, identified the September 17th mission authorization, and interviewed Chen in 1986, 1 year before Chen's death. The resulting article in Journal of Military History, published in 1996, was 17 pages long and reached an academic audience of approximately 4,000 readers. Mainstream historians largely ignored it. Popular World War II literature focuses on battles, campaigns, famous leaders. A story about a wooden bomb dropped on a fake airfield didn't fit standard narrative frameworks. No memorial exists for Carson in Whitby. The town's war memorial lists 127 names of local men killed in World War II. Carson's name is there, in alphabetical order, with no indication he did anything except die. The fake airfield near Calais was demolished in 1944 during Allied preparations for D-Day. Housing developments now cover the site. A French municipal database lists the coordinates as Ancienne Installation Allemande, former German installation. Nothing specifies what kind. In 2003, a British aviation enthusiast exploring the Imperial War Museum archives found Peters' photograph of the wooden bomb. He posted it online with minimal context. The image circulated briefly on World War II forums, generated 14 comments speculating about its authenticity, then faded into digital obscurity. Here's what matters. Between May and September 1941, Dariusiev Bomber Command lost 12 aircraft and 72 aircrew attacking fake German airfields. After September 1941, losses to dummy targets dropped to 0. Not because of improved bombs, not because of better navigation, not because of superior tactics, because a photo interpreter from a fishing town noticed shadows didn't move, a carpenter carved a joke, and a wing commander looked the other way, while 2 sergeants violated regulations to send a message. Real innovation in war doesn't always come from generals or research laboratories or government programs. Sometimes it comes from a 142-pound flight lieutenant with thick glasses who recognized that the perfect weapon against German engineering precision was British sarcasm carved into wood. The Luftwaffe got the message. They stopped building fake airfields. Dozens of British aircrew survived missions they would have otherwise died flying, and the man who made it happen died unknown, remembered by 3 sentences in a local newspaper, his greatest achievement classified for 27 years, his name appearing on exactly 1 memorial stone without explanation or context. But the wooden bomb story didn't end on that French runway. What Carson and Chen didn't know, what couldn't have known, was that their carved joke would trigger a cascade of psychological warfare operations that would fundamentally change how both sides approached deception for the remainder of the war. 3 weeks after the wooden bomb drop, Luftwaffe intelligence officer Major Heinrich Wolf sat in his Paris headquarters office, staring at Hartmann's photographs. Wolf had overseen the fake airfield program since its inception in 1939. He'd personally designed 7 of the installations. The wooden bomb wasn't just humiliating, it was strategically catastrophic. Wolf drafted a classified memo to Luftwaffe High Command dated October 9, 1941. The document, discovered in captured German archives in 1947 but not declassified until 1983, contained a remarkable admission. The enemy has demonstrated complete penetration of our deception operations through a single act of calculated mockery. This suggests intelligence capabilities far exceeding our previous estimates. Recommend immediate review of all operational security protocols. The memo triggered a security panic that rippled through German military intelligence. If the British knew about fake airfields, what else did they know? Were agents compromised? Were codes broken? Had the entire intelligence apparatus been penetrated? The answer was simpler than the Germans imagined. One photo interpreter with keen eyes and a carpenter with skilled hands had exposed their elaborate deception. But German command, operating under assumptions of complex Allied intelligence networks, launched a massive counterintelligence investigation that consumed hundreds of man-hours and diverted resources from actual security threats. British intelligence monitored German signals traffic and noticed the panic. Decrypted messages, processed through the Ultra program at Bletchley Park, showed increased counterintelligence activity, paranoid communications about Allied infiltration, and heated debates about which operations might be compromised. The wooden bomb had created exactly the outcome Carson intended, multiplied by factors he never anticipated. Not only had it exposed fake airfields, it had triggered systemic paranoia that degraded German intelligence effectiveness for months afterward. In November 1941, RAF intelligence officers at Medmenham noticed something extraordinary in reconnaissance photographs of German positions. The enemy was removing fake installations at an accelerating rate. 3 dummy airfields dismantled the first week, 5 more the second week. By December, intelligence confirmed that German forces had abandoned 23 fake installations across occupied France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Squadron leader Patricia Hayes, the senior intelligence analyst who reviewed Carson's original fake airfield reports, compiled a statistical analysis of bomber losses before and after the wooden bomb incident. Her classified report, dated January 12, 1942, documented Wellington bomber losses to flak near dummy targets, 73% reduction, total ordnance expended on fake installations, decreased from 840 tons in August 1941 to 12 tons in December 1941, aircrew casualties attributed to dummy target flak traps, reduced from 9 to 12 per month to 0. Hayes calculated that the wooden bomb operation, which cost approximately £2 in materials and 90 minutes of flight time, had saved the equivalent of 828 tons of bombs, preserved at least 14 aircraft, and prevented an estimated 84 casualties over the subsequent 4 months. Her report recommended that Carson receive immediate commendation for exceptional intelligence work, resulting in significant operational success and preservation of RAF resources. The recommendation was denied. The official response, signed by a group captain whose name was redacted in declassified documents, stated, "Recognition would require acknowledgement of extensive bombing of fake targets, which would constitute admission of intelligence failure. Recommend no action." Carson never knew his work had been formally analyzed. He never knew the statistical impact of his observation. He never knew that a senior intelligence officer fought for his recognition and was overruled by bureaucrats protecting institutional reputation. He continued flying reconnaissance missions, studying photographs, filing reports that were read, analyzed, and filed away without his name attached. But the wooden bomb's influence extended beyond statistics and saved lives. It inspired a new approach to psychological operations within RAF intelligence circles. If a single act of targeted mockery could disrupt German operations more effectively than conventional bombing, what else could be achieved through creative psychological warfare? In February 1942, the Joint Committee between RAF Intelligence and the Political Warfare Executive was formed to explore unconventional deception and psychological pressure tactics. The committee included Patricia Hayes, 3 RAF intelligence officers, 2 PWE propaganda specialists, and 1 representative from MI6's rumor-spreading section. The committee's founding document, discovered in National Archives in 1994, explicitly referenced the wooden bomb as a template for low-cost, high-impact psychological operations that exploit enemy assumptions and trigger disproportionate responses. Over the next 18 months, this committee developed and implemented 12 separate psychological operations targeting German forces. These included dropping fake German medals with satirical inscriptions over occupied territories, broadcasting German military communications that were actually elaborate hoaxes designed to create confusion, planting false intelligence documents that led German counterintelligence on exhausting wild goose chases, creating fake German newspaper front pages announcing fictional defeats and scandals. None of these operations achieved the pure elegance of Carson's wooden bomb. None reduced enemy effectiveness as dramatically with such minimal investment. But they represented a philosophical shift in how British intelligence approached warfare. Sometimes mockery was more effective than explosives. German intelligence, meanwhile, struggled to regain credibility after the fake airfield exposure. Major Wolf was reassigned to administrative duties in Berlin, effectively a demotion. The entire Deception Operations Division was restructured. New protocols required multiple verification layers before dummy installations could be approved. Ironically, this overcorrection made German deception less effective. The elaborate approval process slowed construction of legitimate tactical deceptions. Resources that should have gone to useful camouflage and misdirection were instead consumed by bureaucratic redundancy, designed to prevent another wooden bomb humiliation. One person understood the wooden bomb's strategic significance better than anyone: Feldwebel Klaus Hartmann, the Luftwaffe NCO who found it. Hartmann kept detailed personal journals throughout the war, journals that survived in his family's possession until donated to Bundesarchiv in 2001. His entry for September 18, 1941, after finding the wooden bomb: "Today I found proof that war is not only about who shoots straightest or flies fastest. The British sent us a message carved in wood, painted grey, dropped from the sky. The message said, 'We see through your tricks, we are not fooled, and we have the confidence to laugh at you. This is more dangerous than bombs. Bombs destroy buildings. Mockery destroys confidence.' I reported it officially, but I think my commanders don't understand what it really means. The enemy is not just fighting us, they are laughing at us, and they are good enough to laugh while winning. I think we will lose this war. Not today, not this year, but eventually. Because an enemy who can laugh while fighting is an enemy who believes they will win, and belief matters more than most generals understand." Hartmann survived the war, returned to Munich, and worked as a building inspector for 31 years. He never spoke publicly about the wooden bomb, but his journals reveal that he recognized its significance immediately, more clearly than most officers on either side. The psychological impact extended to individual German soldiers who heard about the incident through unofficial channels. Wehrmacht and Luftwaffe personnel shared the story in barracks conversations, mess hall rumors, letters home. Each retelling amplified the humiliation, while simultaneously creating grudging respect for British boldness. Corporal Franz Becker, a Luftwaffe radio operator stationed near Lille, wrote to his wife on October 3, 1941, "Heard a crazy story about the British dropping a wooden bomb on one of our fake airfields. Not sure if it's true or just rumor, but if true, it's the most British thing I've ever heard. Only they would waste fuel and risk a bomber just to deliver an insult. Makes me laugh and worry at the same time." That duality, laughter mixed with worry, was exactly what psychological operations aim to achieve. Humor that undermines confidence, jokes that reveal uncomfortable truths, mockery that makes soldiers question whether their commanders know what they're doing. By spring 1942, German military intelligence had compiled a classified file on British psychological warfare innovations that included 14 documented incidents, with the wooden bomb featured prominently as the initiating event. The file's conclusion warned, "The enemy has demonstrated willingness to invest operational resources in actions designed purely to undermine morale and confidence. Traditional military response frameworks are insufficient to counter this approach. The Germans were correct, but couldn't develop effective countermeasures. Humor-based psychological warfare is nearly impossible to defend against because appropriate response options don't exist. Ignore it, and it suggests the mockery hit too close to truth. Retaliate seriously, and you look humorless and defensive. Attempt to mock back and you risk escalating a contest you're already losing. The Luftwaffe chose to ignore it officially while fuming privately, the worst possible response. It confirmed British suspicions that the wooden bomb had struck a psychological nerve while providing no deterrent against future operations. In May 1942, RAF intelligence received a report from an escaped British POW who had been held near a Luftwaffe base in occupied Belgium. According to his debriefing, German guards were talking about some incident with a wooden bomb. They seemed genuinely annoyed about it. One guard said British intelligence was making fools of the Luftwaffe. Another said, "At least they're clever fools." The conversation suggested morale problems, not severe but present. That assessment, not severe but present, understated the cumulative impact. Individual psychological operations rarely break armies, but persistent psychological pressure, sustained over months and years, erodes confidence gradually. Soldiers who question their commander's competence fight less effectively. Units that suspect their intelligence is compromised hesitate at crucial moments. Armies that feel mocked lose the psychological edge that determines outcomes in close contests. Carson, flying reconnaissance missions over occupied Europe, never learned that his wooden bomb had triggered this cascade. He studied photographs, identified targets, filed reports. On March 15, 1943, his Wellington suffered engine failure over the North Sea and crashed on landing at RAF Feltwell. 2 crew members died. Carson survived with a fractured collarbone and returned to duty 6 weeks later. On June 6, 1943, he flew his 53rd mission, photographic reconnaissance over Bremen shipyards. On September 12th, his 62nd mission, target assessment after raids on Berlin. Each mission risked his life. Each mission contributed to eventual Allied victory. Each mission was documented with his name in operational logs that were filed, archived, and forgotten. None of it mattered as much as 2 pounds of carved wood dropped on a fake airfield on a September night in 1941. Patricia Hayes, the intelligence officer who calculated the wooden bomb's statistical impact, continued advocating for Carson's recognition throughout 1942 and 1943. She submitted 3 separate commendation recommendations. All were denied with variations of the same reasoning. Acknowledging the wooden bomb required acknowledging that RAF Bomber Command had wasted months attacking fake targets. Institutional pride trumped individual recognition every time. Hayes retired from the RAF in 1946 with the rank of Wing Commander. She spent 33 years as a mathematics teacher in Shropshire, never discussing her intelligence work except in the vaguest terms. In 1979, when military historians began researching RAF intelligence operations, she provided a lengthy interview detailing the fake airfield analysis and Carson's role. The interview transcript, archived at the Imperial War Museum, includes this exchange. Historian: "Do you think Carson understood the significance of what he'd done?" Hayes: "I don't think so. He was a photo interpreter. He saw a problem, proposed a solution, executed it, and moved on to the next problem. That's what good intelligence officers do. They don't dwell on past successes because there's always another mission, another photograph, another problem to solve." Historian: "Do you think he should have been recognized?" Hayes: "Absolutely, but recognition would have required senior officers to admit they'd been fooled. Pride prevented that. So Carson flew 73 missions, saved dozens of lives through clever analysis, died in a bomber over Germany, and got 3 sentences in a local newspaper obituary. That's how bureaucracy treats innovation that makes leadership look bad." Hayes died in 1991 at age 83. Her obituary in the Times mentioned her RAF service in 1 paragraph, with no details about intelligence work or the wooden bomb analysis. The pattern repeated across every participant in the wooden bomb operation. Chen, the carpenter who carved it, lived quietly in Manchester, and told the story to 3 people. Peters, the wing commander who authorized it, never discussed it publicly. Whitley, the bombardier who dropped it, died in a training accident in 1944 before anyone thought to interview him about unusual missions. Everyone who made the wooden bomb possible either died young, lived quietly, or was actively discouraged from discussing it. The operation that saved dozens of lives and shifted German psychological calculations was systematically erased from official history, not through conspiracy or cover-up, but through institutional embarrassment and bureaucratic indifference. Only Hartmann's journals, Chen's late-life interview, Hayes's declassified analysis, hand-scattered German archives preserved the story. And those sources weren't connected until German historian Werner Schaffer spent 6 years tracking fragments across 2 countries and 3 languages in the 1990s. By the time Schaffer published his comprehensive account in 1996, every direct participant was dead. The fake airfield near Calais had been demolished and built over. The wooden bomb itself had disappeared. The only physical evidence was Peter's photograph, one grainy image showing a wooden casing on grass, with German script barely visible. That single photograph, posted online in 2003 by an aviation enthusiast, generated 14 comments before fading into digital obscurity. One comment, posted by username RAF Historian UK, read, "If this is real, it's the most British thing ever done in Luftwaffe. If it's fake, it's still brilliant. Either way, respect to whoever thought of it." The commenter was partially right. It was the most British thing done in Luftwaffe, at least in terms of using humor as a weapon. But the commenter's uncertainty, if this is real, illustrated how thoroughly the story had been forgotten. Even dedicated military history enthusiasts couldn't distinguish documented fact from possible myth. This is how institutional memory dies, not through destruction or suppression, but through indifference, embarrassment, and time. The wooden bomb story survived only because scattered individuals preserved fragments, Hayes saving analysis documents, Chen giving an interview, Hartmann keeping journals, Schaffer assembling fragments into coherent narrative. Without those individual acts of preservation, Carson's innovation would have vanished completely. No historian would know that a fishing town photo interpreter exposed German fake airfields. No one would understand that a wooden joke shifted psychological calculations more effectively than 1,000-ton bombing raids. The statistical evidence of lives saved would exist in databases without context or attribution. Morrison, Carson's friend who died at 24 attacking a fake airfield, would remain just another name on a memorial, one of 127 from a small Scottish town, undifferentiated from the others. The promise Carson made at Morrison's funeral to make his death matter would have been kept and immediately forgotten. That's the nature of war. Moments of individual brilliance and sacrifice occur constantly, contribute to eventual victory, and disappear into statistical aggregates. We remember generals and famous battles. We forget photo interpreters and wooden bombs and the small innovations that saved more lives than anyone counted. The challenge is not just preserving these stories. The challenge is recognizing their significance before everyone who lived them is gone. Before documents are destroyed in archive fires, before photographs are discarded as unimportant, before the last person who can say, "I was there, this is what happened," dies without anyone recording their testimony. Carson died in 1944, Chen died in 1987, Hayes died in 1991, Hartmann died in 1993. By 1995, everyone with direct knowledge of the wooden bomb was gone. Schaffer's research, published in 1996, arrived barely in time. He interviewed Chen 1 year before Chen's death, accessed Hartmann's journals shortly after they were donated to archives, found Hayes's declassified documents before they could be lost in bureaucratic shuffling. 10 years earlier, the story would have been unrecoverable. 10 years later, key documents might have been destroyed or lost. Schaffer succeeded because he worked at exactly the right moment, late enough that documents were declassified, early enough that participants and evidence still existed. That window is closing for thousands of similar stories. World War II veterans are dying at rates exceeding 1,000 per day globally. Archives are underfunded and overwhelmed. Documents are deteriorating. Photographs are fading. Digital records are migrating across platforms, losing metadata, becoming disconnected from context. Within 20 years, direct testimony about WW2 will be gone completely. Within 50 years, secondary sources, children of veterans, archivists who spoke with participants, will also be gone. At that point, only documented evidence will remain. And if stories like the wooden bomb aren't documented now, while evidence and memory still exist, they'll disappear forever. That's why these stories matter. Not just because they're interesting or surprising, but because they represent human ingenuity, courage, and creativity under impossible pressure. They show how individuals operating outside official channels sometimes achieve more than entire bureaucracies. They demonstrate that innovation doesn't always come from expected sources or follow predicted paths. Carson wasn't a general or a scientist or a famous leader. He was a 142-pound photo interpreter with thick glasses from a fishing town who noticed shadows didn't move correctly. Chen wasn't a military strategist. He was a carpenter's apprentice who could carve wood precisely. Together, with help from a wing commander willing to look the other way, they created an operation that saved dozens of lives and shifted psychological calculations across an entire theater of war. And they did it with 2 pounds of oak planks, some paint, and savage British humour carved into words the Germans could read. Wood for wood. The Luftwaffe got the message immediately. German military intelligence got it within days. Historians got it 50 years later. Now, through stories like this, maybe more people will get it. Innovation matters. Individual initiative matters. Creative thinking matters. And sometimes the perfect weapon isn't the biggest or most expensive. It's the one nobody expects, delivered with precision and just enough mockery to make the point unforgettable. The wooden bomb didn't end the war. It didn't change grand strategy. It didn't appear in official histories or generate medals or make anyone famous, but it saved lives, exposed deception, and demonstrated that psychological warfare could be as effective as high explosives if executed with intelligence, creativity, and perfect understanding of your enemy's vulnerabilities. That's the lesson. Not that wooden bombs win wars, but that thinking differently, challenging assumptions, and acting decisively based on clear observation can achieve results that conventional approaches miss. Carson saw what others overlooked. Chen built what others thought unnecessary. Peters authorized what others would have forbidden. Together they created something that mattered more than anyone expected. And then they moved on to the next mission, the next problem, the next challenge. Because that's what people do in war. They solve immediate problems as best they can, with whatever tools are available, and let history sort out what matters later. Sometimes history forgets. Sometimes it takes 50 years to remember. Sometimes stories survive only because scattered individuals preserve fragments against indifference and time. This is one of those stories. Wood for wood. The Luftwaffe got the message. Now you have it too. If this story moved you, if you believe people like James Carson deserve to be remembered, hit that like button. Subscribe so YouTube knows people care about these forgotten heroes. And drop a comment telling us, where are you watching from? Do you have family who served? Did you learn something today you'd never heard before? These stories matter because people like Carson saved lives without recognition, without glory, without anything except the knowledge they'd done something right. The least we can do is remember their names. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for keeping these memories alive. Wood for wood. The Luftwaffe got the message. It's time we got it too.